The sentence landed like a dropped glass. "We're kicking the unwanted people out of our lives. You're first," my brother said, smiling like this was a joke he'd rehearsed.
My dad laughed.
Not nervous. Not uncomfortable. Real laughter. "The only thing you're good for is your money." No one noticed my hand shaking except me. I tucked it under the table and stared at the scratch in the wood, the one I'd never bothered to sand down. "My name is Allison Reed. I'm 36. We were sitting in the dining room of the house I bought 3 years earlier, though no one ever called it mine. They called it the family place, like ownership was a rumor instead of paperwork. My brother leaned back, crossing his arms. He'd always done that when he thought he was winning. "You live alone. No kids. No husband. You don't need all this space." My dad nodded. "Family comes first." I waited. I always waited. That was my flaw. I believed silence could save relationships if I gave it enough time. But something small broke inside me then. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a thin crack. I thought about the missed birthdays they blamed on traffic. The loan I gave my brother that never came back. The time my dad forgot my surgery and asked why I sounded tired. I stood up, my chair scraping too loudly. My voice surprised me.
"Calm.
"Steady."
Perfect," I said.
They blinked. "Then start packing your things," I continued, resting my palm on the table. "Because this is my house." My brother laughed again, shorter this time. "Don't be dramatic." My dad waved his hand. "Sit down, Allison." I didn't. For the first time in my life, I watched their smiles fade one by one as the room went quiet and told me this dinner wasn't ending the way they thought. No one moved. The air felt thick, like before a storm when even breathing sounds loud. My brother was the first to stand, his chair tipping back. "You don't mean that," he said. "Not asking."
"Telling."
My dad sighed, rubbing his temple. "You're tired. You've always been emotional." That word again. Emotional. The family's favorite eraser. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My hand was steadier now. Funny how fear drains out once you finally stop begging. "I do mean it," I said. "And I can prove it." I tapped the screen, slid it across the table.
The deed.
My name alone. No fine print. No shared anything. My brother leaned forward, squinting like the letters might rearrange themselves if he stared long enough. "This doesn't," he stopped. Dad picked up the phone. His laugh didn't come this time. "You tricked us," he said quietly. I shook my head. "I told you. 3 years ago. You were too busy telling me how lucky I was to have family." Silence again. But different now. Heavy.
Cornered.
My brother's voice dropped. "So, what? You're throwing us out? Your own family?" I looked at the wall clock. The cheap one I bought online, because it ticked too loud. They'd complained about it for months. "I'm giving you 30 days, I said. "That's generous." Dad's chair scraped back hard. "After everything we did for you?" I thought of my first apartment with mold in the bathroom, of working late nights while my brother found himself, of wiring money with notes that said don't worry about paying me back. I picked up my phone. "I'll send the timeline in writing." My brother's face hardened. "You think this makes you powerful?" I met his eyes.
"No."
"It makes me done." And in that moment, as my dad stared at the floor and my brother clenched his jaw, I realized something colder than anger had taken its place. Relief. They didn't leave that night. My dad slept in the guest room like always. My brother slammed the door to his old bedroom so hard the picture frames rattled. I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the house settle around me, the tick of that cheap clock counting something I couldn't name yet. At 6:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A group text. Family chat. "Dad, we need to talk like adults." "Brother, this isn't how family works." "Aunt Carol, I don't know what's going on, but you should apologize." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I set the phone face down and made coffee. Too strong. I always did that when I was nervous. By noon, the calls started. Not angry yet.
Concerned. Soft. Strategic.
"You're being manipulated," my dad said when I answered. Your brother's stress. I looked out the window at the lawn I paid to keep green. So was I said. For years. He lowered his voice. We can forget what was said. We'll move on. That was his favorite trick. Pretend time erased behavior. I emailed the eviction notice that afternoon. Formal. Polite. 30 days. No emotion. I attached the deed again, just in case memory failed them twice. My brother found me in the hallway an hour later. His tone had changed. You don't want to do this, he said. People talk. I noticed then how his hands shook. Just a little. Same as mine had the night before. About what? I asked. He swallowed. About you. I smiled.
Small. Tired.
They already do. That night, I lay awake listening to footsteps above me. Doors opening.
Closing.
Whispers. Planning. And somewhere between the ticking clock and my racing thoughts, it hit me. They weren't hurt. They were scared. And for the first time in my life, that fear wasn't mine to carry. The shift came quietly. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just a new tone, carefully practiced. My dad started cooking breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs the way I liked them. He hadn't done that since I was 14. My brother began asking before using things. Mind if I take the car? Is this okay? I almost laughed the first time he said please. They were adapting. Learning the rules of a house they no longer owned. On day 6, my aunt stopped by unannounced. She hugged me too long. Smelled like floral perfume and judgment. Families don't evict family, she whispered in my ear. I stepped back. Families don't call each other unwanted. She blinked. He didn't mean? He did, I said.
Calm. Even.
The calm surprised her. That night, my brother cornered me near the stairs. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're enjoying this. I looked at the banister, the dent from when he'd thrown his bag years ago, and blamed me for it. No, I said. I'm surviving it.
He scoffed.
You always play the victim. Something inside me hardened. And you always confuse accountability with cruelty. The clock ticked louder as if agreeing. Day 12, my dad handed me an envelope. Inside were handwritten apologies.
Messy. Rushed.
No specifics. I'm proud of you, he said. You're strong. I folded the papers neatly. You taught me that, I replied. It wasn't a compliment. That night, I installed security cameras. Not hidden. Visible. I wanted them to know. When my brother noticed, he froze. You don't trust us? I met his eyes. Trust requires history. He didn't argue. As I went to bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Dark circles. A chipped nail I kept forgetting to fix. Still standing.
Still calm.
And as the house grew quieter each night, I realized something unsettling. They weren't trying to stay because they loved me. They were trying to stay because losing this house meant losing the version of themselves they'd built on my silence. The first deadline passed without a box packed. Not a single drawer emptied. No plans made. Just assumptions. My brother started coming home later. My dad spent hours on the phone, pacing, his voice low. Every conversation ended the same way. She wouldn't really do that. On day 16, a letter arrived. Thick paper. Legal language. A cease and desist. From my brother's lawyer. I read it twice, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was desperate. That afternoon, I forwarded the letter to my attorney. Then I sent one message back. All communication in writing. Please respect the timeline. My brother stormed into the kitchen. You're humiliating me. I poured water into my glass. Spilled a little. Left it. You hired a lawyer, I said. What did you expect? Dad slammed his hand on the counter. You're tearing this family apart. I met his gaze.
No.
I stopped holding it together by myself. The cameras caught everything after that. The raised voices. The pacing. The moment my brother kicked the pantry door and blamed the hinge. That night, my aunt posted a vague message online. Some people forget where they come from. I muted her. On day 19, my brother tried kindness again. Left flowers on my desk. Wrong kind. I was allergic. You remember I can't have lilies, I said. He stared at them like they'd betrayed him. I realized then he didn't know me at all. Not really. He'd only known what I provided. The clock ticked. 20 days. 21. On day 22, movers showed up. Not for them.
For me.
I packed the things that were mine long before the house was: my journals, my grandmother's watch, the chipped mug with a faded logo. The watch didn't work unless you tapped it twice.
A flaw.
Like me. As the boxes stacked by the door, my brother's voice cracked. Where are you going? I looked around the room, emptying in pieces. Somewhere I can breathe. And for the first time they understood. This wasn't a threat. It was an exit. I didn't leave the house. That was the part they hadn't predicted. The movers were for the guest rooms. For the storage spaces they'd slowly filled with their lives. I watched my brother's face drain as box after box came down the stairs.
You're serious, he said.
I always was, I replied. Dad sat heavily on the couch, the leather creaking under his weight. He looked older now. Smaller. The kind of tired you can't fake away. You'd really do this to us, he murmured. I adjusted the strap of my bag, noticed the loose thread I kept meaning to trim. You did this to yourselves. The days blurred after that.
Cardboard. Tape.
The sound of my name spoken like a problem to solve. On day 26, my brother asked for more time. His voice cracked in a way that almost reached me. Just a week. I thought of the years I'd waited.
No.
He nodded slowly. Acceptance, or something close to it. The night before the deadline, my dad knocked on my door. Softly. He'd never knocked before. I failed you, he said. No excuses. No laughter. Just the words. I looked at him. Really looked. The man who taught me how to ride a bike and how to stay quiet in rooms that didn't want me. I know, I said. He flinched. But he didn't argue. Morning came too quickly. The sun through the curtains felt cruelly normal. They stood by the door with their bags. My brother wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pressed something into my hand.
A key.
Just in case, he said. I closed my fingers around it. The metal was warm. As the door shut behind them, the house exhaled. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and listened to the clock tick. Not counting time anymore. Marking freedom. And for the first time since I could remember, the silence felt earned. The silence didn't last. It never does. By the second evening alone, my phone started buzzing again. Not calls this time. Messages. Cousins. Old family friends. People who hadn't used my name in years suddenly remembered how to spell it. Your dad's devastated. Your brother's struggling. Family is family. I let the phone buzz itself quiet. I spent that night walking through the house slowly, barefoot, touching things without asking permission. The wall by the stairs still had the faint mark from when I measured myself as a kid. I'd never painted over it. Funny what we protect. On day 2, a letter slid under the door. Handwritten. My brother's handwriting was still slanted the same way it had been in school. You won. I hope it was worth it. I read it twice, then folded it and placed it in a drawer I didn't open often. Not trash. Not treasure. Just truth. That afternoon, my lawyer called. Your brother's withdrawn his complaint, she said. And your father signed a release. I closed my eyes. Relief came in waves, but so did something heavier. Later, I sat at the dining table alone. Same chair. Same scratch in the wood. I tapped my grandmother's watch twice. It ticked back to life. I thought about how close I'd come to giving in. To apologizing for existing. To paying for love again. If this ever happened to you, say same in the comments. That night, I packed one last box. Not to leave.
To clear space.
Inside, I placed the apologies, the letters, the expectations I'd carried like unpaid debt. I sealed it and slid it into the garage. Not forgotten. Just finished. As I turned off the lights, my phone lit up once more. One message. From my dad. The house feels empty. I typed back, hands steady. It always did. And I set the phone down, knowing tomorrow wouldn't be quieter, but it would finally be mine. The house changed after that. Not immediately, not magically, but slowly, like lungs learning new air. I repainted the dining room first, covered the scratch in the table with a runner I liked, but had always been told was too plain. I replaced the clock. The new one didn't tick. The silence felt intentional now. A week later, I found the spare key my dad had given me sitting on the counter where I'd left it. I held it for a long moment, then placed it in a small envelope and mailed it back. No note. No explanation. Boundaries don't need speeches. The messages tapered off. Sympathy turned into curiosity. Curiosity into something like respect. People are strange that way. They only understand strength once it stops asking permission. One afternoon, I opened the garage and looked at the sealed box. The one full of letters and apologies and almosts. I didn't open it. I labeled it with a marker instead. Before. Then I slid it to the back and closed the door. I started hosting friends. Real ones. People who asked before sitting. Who noticed when my voice went quiet. Someone chipped a mug by accident and immediately apologized. I laughed. It was just a mug. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear my brother's voice in my head. My dad's laugh. The old reflex to shrink. But it doesn't last. Because now, when I stand in the kitchen, barefoot, alone, steady, I feel something solid under me. Not anger. Not triumph. Ownership. Not just of the house. Of my space. My silence. My worth. I didn't kick anyone out of my life that night. I walked myself back in. And this time, I locked the door behind me.